All right, and I'm back. So I've got everything rolled up. I've got the wrinkles steamed out. I've got my top leader cloth showing where the backing is. So this will help me kind of get my batting and my top of my quilt laid on here to get ready to start quilting. So the next thing I need to do is cut a piece of batting that's going to fit. So remember, my quilt is 68 inches long, and I cut my backing fabric 78 inches long, which is 10 inches longer than the quilt top. I want to cut the batting about 8 inches longer than the quilt top. So it's going to sit a couple of inches, maybe an inch on each side, inside the backing fabric. I have a couple of issues with doing that. Number one, I don't have equipment to accurately measure my batting, so I have to kind of guesstimate with a tape measure. I always end up cutting my batting a little bit larger, and I'd rather have it a little bit larger than to have it way too small. So if that happens, I end up having to trim it on at least one side, which I'm fine doing. But I'm going to show you my process for cutting my batting off of a big roll when I don't have the space or the equipment to do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my ruler and get my scissors and get my tape measure. So again, I need about 8 inches longer than my quilt top. My quilt top is 68 inches, so I need about 76 inches of batting. So the first, and I'm going to get a pin, which may or may not help. We're going to see. I'm going to kind of hold these things over here out of my way, just lay them on my ironing board. Now, my tape measure, so if I look at my batting that I've cut, this is nice cotton batting. And it's not cut straight because this is what I've been having to do for several quilts here that I've been making. I've got inches and millimeters, so I want to be sure I'm on the inches side of my tape measure. And I want 76 inches. And I'm going to leave a little bit of extra here because I'm not sure how even it is. So I'm going to start a little bit in, which also is one reason why my batting might be a little bit longer. And I'm just going to start rolling this around my batting, holding it as I roll. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. My tape measure is only 60 inches, so when I get to 60, I'll have to recalibrate here. All right, so I'm at my 60-inch mark, which is right there. I'm just going to hold that with my finger, roll my tape back up. Now I need 16 inches more. I need to get to 76, so I need 16 inches. So I'm going to put the line back where my finger was, and I'm going to go 16 more inches, which is about right there. So there is where I need to cut my batting. Now we're going to try something. This is new. I haven't done this before. It's just an idea I have. If I take my ruler, so I can kind of cut this semi-straight, hopefully, I'm going to take my ruler and assume that the fold there is straight. And if I put my ruler where that fold is, maybe I can take my Sharpie and just draw myself a cut line. We're going to try. This is better than what I've been doing. All right, so I have that line. Put it against my door to hold it, to measure from. So maybe I'll do a better job of cutting my batting. We'll see. I kind of try to maintain straight line. Again, I may have an extra inch or so anyway. When I get to the bottom there, that's a problem. All right, and I'm not worried about a black line on my batting because I'm going to have enough when I trim my quilt. All that's going to get trimmed off. But that gives me a straighter line to follow with my scissors, so I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged that this might be a good method. Now I'm going to pull my batting around so it's out of the way. And I don't have good batting shears. These are just my really good fabric scissors, but they'll do the trick. I'm just going to cut down that line as well as I can. Again, I'm short, so sometimes being short is a disadvantage when you're doing stuff like this. right, voila. I think that's straighter than what I've been doing. So hopefully that little trick will help you if you're cutting your batting off of a roll and it's not coming in a preset package. Okay. Whew. All right, so we have our batting cut. Now, when you look at your batting, in most cases, at least in all the cases I have found, there is a right side and a wrong side. And I know that the way I cut this is on the length. So I want this to be the length of my quilt and this to be the width of my quilt. So if you look at your batting, you have one side, the way I was told, was dimples and pimples. You have one side that looks like little dimples where you see it's pushed in from the needle when it was created. And then the opposite side looks like pimples where the needle came out. It's raised, it's bumpy. The bumpy side is the wrong side. That's the side you want down on your backing. You want the right side with a nice little dimply look where it looks like the indentions go in. That's your right side. That's the side that you want to lay on your backing fabric. So I'm going to lay it up here, start smoothing it out. See how good of a job I did cutting it. We would like for it to be about 1 inch inside the backing fabric, and hey, I think I might have did a good job. The other thing too is I'm trying to be careful to not stretch it. This is a cotton batting, and it's easy to stretch, and then you'll get these little stretchy looks in it, which is harder to keep it straight. I'm happy with this. I do want to go a little bit up higher. I'm going to have plenty of extra batting and backing at the end because my quilt is only 87 inches, but the backing and the batting are both 120 inches, so we'll have a lot left over. I do save all my leftover scraps. As you can see in this huge bin right here of leftover batting scraps. Eventually, at some point, I will do something with these. These are great for small projects like table runners, or doing a quilt as you go quilt where you just need squares of batting, or doing bowl cozies, doing all kinds of things. There's lots of things I can use my batting for. I just have to have time to start getting through it and start cutting it. Okay, enough about that. So now I'm getting ready to load my quilt top. And I know I want to load it on the width of my design, not the length. So this is the length of my design. I want to load it this way from the width. This is not a directional quilt, so it doesn't matter which end I load. I'm just going to grab it and go. I'm going to just start placing it on my batting. Now you do have, well, maybe you have, you may have the frame that has the bar for loading your quilt top. I don't use this. Maybe some people do. I prefer to kind of float my quilt on the top. And I use clamps, quilt clamps. It just works better for me. It's easier for me to just keep my quilt straight, and I just prefer doing it that way. So I don't use my bar. Now I'm trying to get my quilt top below my batting. Try to eyeball it semi-straight. Make sure my batting is not wrinkly here. Hopefully you're getting a good view of what I'm doing. I'm using this GoPro and I'm not always sure if I have the right angle. So if I don't, I apologize. Just kind of get this straight. Straight as I can get it. I have black marker on my fingers, which does not look very nice, but it's dry, so it's not going to get on my quilt. All right. So I've kind of got my quilt semi-straight, more or less. I want to smooth this top, make sure it's laying nice and flat. Put a little more tension on my frame. I don't want it sinking in, I want it laying flat. Just smooth, 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 smooth. Oh, wish my batting was a little bit higher up there. Now, I can already see I'm going to have a bit of a problem setting my safe area. I'm going to have to advance this a little bit forward because it's so far back to the back of the frame. I'm not going to be able to set the safe area there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of shift this down a bit. Like I said, I'm going to have plenty of backing to play with, so it's fine if I do that. Just want to shift this down just a hair rather than having to roll my top out more. Just going to shift my quilt with the batting down just a hair. I'm barely on the batting at the top there, which I'm not liking. So I'm going to adjust my batting a little more. I want the batting above the quilt top. And again, I'm going to shift everything down a hair. You want to be sure you have plenty of room to set your safe area on your machine, but you also want to have as much space available to quilt your design. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with this, the way it's laying, but following Valerie's techniques, which I have learned a lot from, is trying to line up my quilt straight at the very beginning of loading it. That's going to make a huge difference in how it finishes. I don't know if you've ever quilted a quilt before and you get to the end and you have a whole bunch of extra fabric that you've got to try to figure out how to work in or create tucks. It's happened to me way too many times. And then when I learned this technique from Valerie, I have not had that happen at all, by making sure when I start my quilt that I have it as straight as possible. So we're going to utilize our laser. Okay, so right now it's wanting me to set my safe area. I can go ahead and do that. You can bypass that step because you're going to be setting your safe area when you start your quilt, but just for the sake of showing you, let's go ahead and do it. When you turn on your software, it's going to want you to set your safe area. So you have to kind of lie to the machine a little bit. You want to make your safe area larger than your quilt. So you're going to come way, way outside, all the way to the very top left-hand corner, if you can see this, and set that top left-hand corner. Then you're going to take your machine all the way down. You have to kind of go slow. To the very, very bottom right, outside of your quilt, and set that as your right safe area. So now it thinks your machine is set for where it can quilt. I'm a little bit further to the right here than I want to be because my clamps are going to interfere with my quilt. So I'm going to shift, and I have a lot of room down here. So as you can see, I'm going to shift my top. I got to be careful. I don't want to stretch my batting. I really want to shift this down. I could just shift the top and leave the batting, which probably would have been a smarter move. Oh shoot, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to adjust everything. I'll come back and show you what I did.